And welcome back to Washington Commanders Insider. Today, we are looking at the most recent re-signings here for the Washington Commanders as they bring back some familiar faces in Zach Ertz and John Bates. We're going to be talking about the impact that has on the Commanders. And then we're also going to be looking at some NFL news and just some players that are on the move, some which maybe could have been linked to the Washington Commanders. Perhaps the Commanders maybe would have made a play for him. So we'll be talking about Devontae Adams. We'll be talking about the latest here on Myles Garrett, and then also to DK Metcalf. And just looking at some of the players the Washington Commanders could still go after here via trade and free agency. And so let's start with the most recent re-signings here for the Commanders, and that is Zach Ertz and John Bates coming back. And so starting with Zach Ertz and his return to the Washington Commanders, it looks like that this is going to be an incentive type of deal. Reportedly, they're saying that $6.25 million is the deal with incentives up to $9 million. Looking at his 2024 numbers, 66 catches, 654 yards, and 7 touchdowns. And so, talking about Zach Ertz and just his impact now on the Washington Commanders. And so, look, I think that this is definitely a huge re-signing. I think that this goes right along the lines of what we saw here, what we're going to see with Bobby Wagner. Look, these are guys that have done it at a high level, and I definitely think that, they are tone setters for this team. I think that they have certainly helped just shape the personality of this team and just really get that winning culture moving forward. So you want to bring those guys back into your building. And look, with Zach Ertz, I think that he still has plenty left in the tank. In fact, going into his numbers a little bit more last season, he had 91 targets, which literally he almost got to 100 targets, which he hasn't had that many since 2019, where he had 135 targets. And he did a good job with them. Look, 66 receptions, the 654, which we just talked about. But his averages per reception actually went back up. He was almost at 10 yards an average. His career, he averages 10.4. So he's at 9.9 is the average. And that's one of his better averages that he's had since 2021, I believe. Yes. So since he had a 10.3 average there in 2021. And so that is a good sign to see. That lets you know that he still has plenty left in the tank. And I definitely think that working with Jaden Daniels another year, I think he's going to become a bit more comfortable with working with Jaden Daniels. And I think that he was huge for us as far as in the red zone, because he had 7 touchdowns, which was actually the second most in his career. I see that with the Eagles in 2017 and 2018, he had 8 touchdowns there. And that suggests to me that, look, he is going to be really utilized, I think, in the red zone. He still can be very good over the middle of the field. I think with that 6'5", 250 frame, he does a terrific job as far as boxing out. And he's definitely a player that I feel like that Jaden Daniels really trusts on the guy to have it downs. And so I think between him and Deebo Samuel, I think that they are going to really cause some havoc over the middle of the field. And so I think that this is a great signing. And so next up, looking at John Bates. And so it looks like that John Bates is going to be coming back. Don't see any details of the deal. The only thing that I see here via CBS Sports, which was reported here by the NFL Network, that it is going to be a 3-year contract. And so in this last year, he had 13 targets for 84 yards and in 2024. And so his lowest totals in both categories in 4 seasons. Obviously, Zach Ertz, he pretty much took over there as tight end 1. And so it's going to be interesting because I think between John Bates, then you have Ben Sinnott. I think a lot of people want to see him out there. And I think that it's going to be a competition to see who really rises up as a tight end 2. And I like John Bates a lot. When you look at, just some of his productivity, I think over the years, I think he's been a very good, commander for us. And I certainly think that, look, he could still be utilized in this offense, even if he falls to tight end 3. I think that there's still, perhaps a lot that this Washington Commanders could do with him. And so I still like John Bates as well. Look, here is a guy that, he is also a part of that winning culture for us. And I think that he's shown, like I said, over the past, he can definitely be a player that you can count on. I know it was a low with the receptions. And, he's only, I think his max he's had is 21 or 28 targets, excuse me. And so it's not like he's had, too many targets. And I think that when he does get the targets, he's made plays, because in 2023, when he had his most targets at 28 targets, he caught 19 of those. And it was a 7.9 average. And in fact, this year, even though he had, season lows with the targets and the yardage, his average reception was up. And so that's good to see. And so hopefully, we can utilize him. But I definitely think that this still helps the Washington Commanders here long term. And so next, I wanted to go ahead and I want to take a look here around the NFL and just looking at, just some of the players that, we were talking about maybe the Washington Commanders could go after. And so this first player is DK Metcalf. And so look, DK Metcalf, it looks like the Steelers are going to trade for him a $150 million contract. It looks like that he's set to go ahead and sign. And so I guess from what I read here, who knows with these sources and things like that, but it looks like that the asking price from the Seahawks actually went down on one of these reports that I see. But I think that this is a good, solid signing for the Pittsburgh Steelers. I think that he has a ton left. Certainly think that, yes, he could have been utilized with the Washington Commanders, but this is a player that the Washington Commanders are certainly going to be out on, as he is going over to the Steelers. And so not a bad pickup for the Steelers. And so next, another player that the Washington Commanders might have been linked to, and we've talked about here on the show before, was Davante Adams. And so it looks like that Davante Adams is headed west. And so it looks like he's headed to the Los Angeles Rams. And so I don't think that that's too much of a shocker, because I think that the reports were saying that he wanted to go back to the West, and he's got there. So it looks like that he's going to get a 2-year contract worth $46 million. This is the report, $26 million guaranteed. So I think that that's going to be a pretty interesting situation there for the Rams. I think that, look, they've kind of, they're picking up, they're retooling, I think, a bit as far as the wide receiver position. I did see that they may even be interested also, too, in Amari Cooper. And so I think that that would be interesting. That's a player that I've talked about. Maybe the Washington Commanders would go after as well. And so we'll see what happens there. But the Washington Commanders are not going to be in on either of those wide receivers. And lastly, look, a defender that, a lot of teams were maybe linked to. It looks like that he has now come off the board as well, and that is Myles Garrett. And so reports have surfaced here that Myles Garrett has agreed to a contract extension to make him the highest paid non-quarterback in NFL history. And so, look, he is set to make $40 million over 4 years. That's going to be his annual salary there. That includes $123.5 million in guaranteed money. And so he is off the books now as far as a player that the Washington Commanders would go after. But there is still a lot the Washington Commanders can get done, either via free agency or trade. And so we talked about it in this last show. I still think that Trey Hendrickson is a player that perhaps the Washington Commanders could go after. I don't think that the draft capital is going to be too steep for him. And another player to consider as well is a player that is right here in our division, and that is Josh Sweat of the Philadelphia Eagles. Look, he had 2.5 sacks against the Chiefs in the Super Bowl. Certainly, he was a great player for them. But look, he's had 33 sacks over the past 4 seasons. He's just going to be 28 next season. So he has plenty left in the tank, made the Pro Bowl in 2021. This is a player that is going to command a huge payday. But the great thing is the Washington Commanders certainly have the salary cap room to go get him. And so that maybe that's a player that, he stays familiar in this division and comes over to the Washington Commanders. You still got a player like Khalil Mack. I think he's still playing at a high level. I know he's 34, but still, I think that this is a player that can come in, and I think he can get some things done. You have Hassan Reddick. We've talked about him. He's going to be out there as well. He's posted double-digit sacks in each season from 2020 to 2023. So he's a player that maybe the Washington Commanders could consider. And also, too, I haven't talked about it, but Joey Bosa, that just got released here from the Los Angeles Chargers. I think that he perhaps could be a player that the Washington Commanders could go after as well. He's dealt with the injuries. I think that that's really been the issue with him. But look, man, 14 sacks the past 3 seasons, not bad as far as, helping your defense. And I've talked about it, just being able to get to the quarterback without having to call too many blitzes. And so still plenty of playmakers out there. Still expect the Washington Commanders to make plenty of noise. But anyway, let me know in the comments here what you're thinking as far as our recent re-signing here of Zach Ertz and John Bates. Do you feel like that, yes, this was a move or moves that needed to be made? And also, too, let me know in the comments with the Washington Commanders being out of DK Metcalf, Devontae Adams, Myles Garrett. Do you think that the Washington Commanders are going to land a player like Josh Sweat? Do they go out and get Bosa? I'd love to hear what your thoughts are. And as we always say, go Commanders, and I will see you on the next one. All right, peace.